Why and how women are excluded from the technology industry in a male-dominated culture? Stay with me to learn about this experience and improve the conditions in which women can develop all their potential and contribute to any single industry that we can possibly imagine. Welcome to your podcast, Online Marketing with Juan Llerena. To succeed in any entrepreneurial project, you need to get prepared and you must learn to learn, unlearn and relearn. In this podcast, we'll help you in three ways. First, giving you an opportunity to join a community of entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs just like you, to support you and learn from each other. Second, by bringing you for free tools, tips and tricks to help you advance your projects faster and to teach you how to let the world know about your products and services. Third, by providing you with inspiration, motivation, and ideas to continue your entrepreneurial journey. We cover subjects of marketing, sales, leadership, and entrepreneurship. Join our tribe of entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs and take charge of your destiny. What are we waiting for? Let's get started. Hello everyone, welcome to your online marketing podcast with Juan Llerena. In this third season, I am doing book reviews. Today I chose a book called Brotopia from Emily Chang. Emily Chang is the author, and this book it was published in 2018, so it's a very recent book which explores a male-dominated culture, particularly in the technology industry, Silicon Valley, as many of you are, I'm sure, familiar with it. And what this book does is it really looks to the whys and how women are excluded from the technology industry. Okay, I believe that if we want to create a better environment for women to thrive, where equality it's breathed and practiced, we need to learn from different industries. In this case, it's a really good example. That's why I picked this book. I just don't want to apply it to the technology industry, because I believe that just in almost any industry that exists today, there is some sort of a form of mentality which thinks that women are better for certain things and not for other things. I rather think that everyone brings a different unique approach and a different and unique perspective and a different and unique talent to every team, to every project that exists, but everyone is capable of developing the best solutions that can exist for people. So women are in many ways excluded. So this book review is dedicated to all of you women which are working very hard every day to earn the same opportunities that us men do have just by being male. And I believe in equality. I believe in social justice. This is an equality and social justice, right? And I want to help creating this mentality where we can break down those barriers that have been created because of one reason or another reason. And this book presents a good explanation of why, particularly again on the technology industry, this happens. And so we're gonna do this book, and again, like I said, from Emily Chang. It's a very interesting perspective and way to understand how some things are presumed, or how we see certain things the way we see them, that we have certain stereotypes, and we are all guilty of that to a certain degree. So that's not the issue. The issue is to let that stay the same way it is by having positive discussions and positive conversations at your workplace, in your community, in your even in your own household, and talk to your kids about it. If you have boys, you can talk to them about equality. If you have girls, you should talk to them as well about equality, because they all need to grow knowing that opportunities are earned by hard work and by talent, not by gender. And this is something that we need to change. So this book starts talking about how in the last 30 years or so, the tech industry is being at the forefront of the global economy as we know it. Technology is changing our life daily. Information is just exponentially increasing every day, thanks to the internet. Particularly, there is a place in California called Silicon Valley, which is known as a hub for successful businesses, which are also very innovative business. We can talk about big companies, big corporations such as Facebook, Google, PayPal, Uber, Amazon, Apple, and many other ones, which are considered to be great places to work, and these are perceived also as very progressive environments to work for people, including men and women. But we're going to learn that through this book that there's still certain norms and certain understandings and certain rules that apply. The people think they are true, and by just accepting these as facts, we're not doing anything if we don't change them, okay? And the goal here is to look at the different realities, like we'll see in this industry, and see what is the new norm, okay? We need to look at work cultures in companies that have been created with some sort of a bro mentality, okay, which is like, it's for my body, this kind of work is only for guys, we are gonna have meetings at these places where we feel, we're more comfortable hanging out with, at a brewery or places like this, where sometimes women don't feel too comfortable attending. If they attend, they're being judged by maybe not being very professional or professional enough. If they don't attend, well, they don't get all these opportunities from these conversations and networking that happens in these places. So we need to be very careful, and we need to be very cautious as far as where these opportunities are taking place, where situations are happening, and this way we can identify and maybe fine-tune opportunities and check with our teams and people in our companies how we can make this a better process and a more inclusive process for all, particularly women, because that's what we're talking about today. Okay, so there's this bro mentality, which this Brotopia book talks about, and clearly it's not a good way to think. It's not a good way to develop a culture in a company, not even in places like Facebook, Google, and so forth. Because as you will see, these male-dominated workplaces really do have very serious implications for business success, and that impacts also our society as a whole. So businesses are not disconnected from society. Businesses are also a reflection of society, and vice versa. Okay, so what I liked about this book again is that it helps us understand this wrong idea that men are designed better to do programming, to build apps, because they're more antisocial, this kind of like a nerd looking guy back from the 80s or the 70s, from popular movies back from that time. And that's just a stereotype. That's just completely wrong. So this book talks about that. Also, it goes back in time, and it teaches us and reminds us how many women have and had computer science degrees in the 80s compared to today. Okay, and you're gonna learn some astonishing numbers where you would think that more women are accessing that science, technology space. And nowadays, the number of graduates from computer science degrees versus in the 80s, it's lessened. Okay, it's not growing; it's going the opposite direction. So we need to understand the why, and we also need to understand that by having these misconceptions about men and women, or maybe just by ignoring these facts that women aren't having access to the same opportunities, well, this book also touches on how much is getting invested in male-led companies when they're compared to female-led ones. Okay, and there's a reason for that too, which we need to help level the playing field for women. And I say that because we men do really have a big saying in this conversation, because we are the ones that are part of the solution as well as we are part of the problem. Okay, So this book, in one of the early chapters, it talks about how women used to be the computer programmers, and this is back in the 1960s. And until somebody came up with a report that changed everything. So if you think about a typical computer programmer, and I was a computer programmer myself back in the 90s, that's how I started on the tech industry. I was a system analyst and a computer programmer. Well, the first image that comes to mind is probably for many people, some kind of nerdy looking guys who are like really bad on, like with their social skills, on social situations, but they're really good and really smart with dealing with numbers. Well, that's just a stereotype, which is a massive contrast to the reality of the early days of computing. So during the first part of the 20th century, according to this book, working in computers was considered more of a clerical job, like using a typewriter of those times or using a switchboard machine. Okay, and it was then perceived as a women's work. So in other words, the earlier computer programmers were women. Okay, so if you have ever seen this movie, let me just think of the name of the movie. Hidden Figures. Yes, the computer Hidden Figures, which came out recently in 2016. You will see that the first women, they worked in groups, and they were working for the U.S. Army during World War II. Okay, and they had PhDs in mathematics. They were programmer and everything else. So the first interesting information here is that, and many people don't know it, is that the astronaut John Glenn, his first successful orbit of the Earth in 1962 was made possible by the work of 3 female NASA mathematicians. Okay, and the lack of recognition for their contribution inspired that movie I just mentioned before, Hidden Figures. Okay, so it's not surprising that later in 1960 there was a need to create a report that claimed that men were better suited for programming than women. Okay, now how did this report came all about? Well, this report was written by 2 men, as you will see, 2 psychologists, William Cannon and Dallas Perry. Both were hired by a software company to characterize the perfect computer programmer. Okay, so they did interview about like almost 1,400 programmers, which less than 200 were female. To begin with, that data is old skewed. Okay, well, they did this research, these 2 psychologists, Cannon and Perry, and they both decided that it was a key trait to be a good programmer that you didn't have to like people. Okay, so they somehow were able to support the idea that having good programming skills and having antisocial behavior and being introverted, it was setting this ideal for the employee that was more likely to be male instead of being woman, because they will have 3 times more the possibility of having some sort of diagnosis of antisocial personality and disorder. Okay, so like this report just came out to create that stereotype. As you can see, it was led by male, and it mainly interviewed males. So again, when we're talking today about the politics, our communities, our schools, that are affecting the people of men and women, that are affecting the livelihoods of people from also minorities, which are lacking representation. This is something we need to change, just so when we're having these conversations about these solutions for everybody, the people that are making these decisions are also having a real good understanding from their own experience, from their own life experience, of what it's like to be, per se, a woman. What it's like to be a woman in the marketplace. What it's like to be a woman, for instance, that has, let's say, a 10 or 20% less income for doing the same work that men do, right? If you assemble a panel of people that are going to decide on how women are being paid, and you're trying to close the income gap and the opportunity gap for them, well, men are going to have a harder time to change this, because that's how the system is nowadays. So we need representation, in this case for women, but also in all aspects of society. Okay, so like it says the story that after the 1960s report, women were the women that were programmers were slowly replaced by men. Okay, until the 1980s, there were 40% computer science degrees that were held by women versus 18% in 2018. So in 1984, 40% of computer science degrees were held by women. In 2011, only 18% were held by women. So you can see how the numbers start shrinking. Okay, and we can see also, this is really interesting because, as you know, I'm a marketer, and when we're trying to develop marketing campaigns, we're trying also not to be biased and not to stereotype. We don't want to create more stereotypes than the ones that already exist, right? But there's this perception that, you know, boys have to play with toys and girls have to play with, like, say, little kitchens or little teapots, you know, like it used to be, I don't know, 40 years ago. Okay, that has to change. Computers in this case, and for this book review, and on this book Brotopia, it says that computers were started to be perceived as boys' toys. Okay, so just think of, you know, what toys do you give to your kids this last Christmas or in the last couple of years, or to your kids when they were growing up, to your boys and to your girls, right? Or what did you get when you were a boy, if you were a girl, when you were growing up? Okay, can you see some correlation here? Well, in part, this stereotyping was perpetrated by, you know, toy manufacturers, teachers, parents, and the children themselves. By the 1980s, when the computers first entered the households, girls were afforded even less exposure, because computers were typically gift or presents for sons, and video games were predominantly targeted towards young boys instead of women, instead of both. We can also say that another chapter in this book talks how about the bro culture, and that's the what this book makes an analysis of with this Brotopia book, is that this bro culture disguises itself as being progressive, but it's actually marginalizing women and objectifies women. How does that happen? Okay, because there is this idea of working hard, playing hard mentality on the tech industry, in the tech workplace, which makes them less friendly and less welcoming to women. So, as crazy as it seems, many meetings in some of these progressive places take place in, you know, sometimes it could be strip clubs, it can be in hot tubs, it can be in, you know, in breweries, and sometimes that puts women in a difficult position whether they should or shouldn't attend. So on one hand, you have women who by missing out, for example, could lose investment opportunities if she's not comfortable attending one of these uncomfortable meetings for her. Now, on the other hand, if this woman decides to attend because she doesn't want to miss on this financial opportunity for her business, she might lose the credibility and even risking being objectified as a woman, instead of being valued by who they are and what they bring to the table in terms of their capabilities, their knowledge, their hard work, and so forth. Okay, so this is just an example of showing how these progressive companies, sometimes they think they're being progressive, but in reality they're just marginalizing women, and they're just making situations more uncomfortable for them, so they opt out of those opportunities. This book also, Brotopia, discusses that when it comes to working in technology, women are typically undervalued, and that opportunity for them to balance their work and their family is extremely difficult for both of them. Okay, for them. Okay, women are undervalued, and workplaces make women to find that work-family balance to almost extremely difficult. So there is example of a few CEO women, such as Yahoo CEO Marissa Mayer, the CEO from YouTube Susan Wojcicki, that made it in the tech career. But these are just very few examples. For example, women are asked to check their coding more frequently, and this is according to the book. And this is, what's the guarantee that a male's coding is going to be better than a woman? If both follow the same standards and the same best practices, well, there should be accounted by the same terms and the same standards, right? Also, there was a study, and I found this really interesting, in the open source coding community GitHub, that even revealed that when the code's gender is withheld, so when you don't know what's the gender of the programmer or the coder, their work or women's work is approved more often than men's. Okay, so it's like one of these ideas that men are going to be doing it better, and that's just, again, an idea. We need to change this. Women deserve the same opportunity. And this book, Brotopia, is taking the work to looking at these statistics and looking at these different situations to make us reflect and say, hey, this really doesn't make sense. Why is this happening? Maybe that's making you think right now, I am actually part of the problem. I haven't realized this, but I'm just, setting my boys for success and setting my girls, my daughters to settle on less, or to not even consider pursuing their passions, because I think that's something for male to do in certain industries. Okay, in this particular case, again, we're looking at the tech industry, but just think, in that space that you work in that particular space that you are developing your business, that you're growing, and, when you're hiring people, what opportunities you're doing. Are you having any stereotypes? Are those stereotypes, really progressive agendas that you have, or are you justifying your bro mentality? For instance, this book, interestingly as well, talks about how some large corporations such as Google, one of my favorite companies because I use a lot of their products, they promote a blend of work and social life kind of mushed together by providing meals, classes, exercise classes, haircuts, fridges full of beer to their employees. Okay, and until recently, Uber used to serve their evening meal at around 8:15. So what does that tell you? That many people are uncomfortable living, or if you live, you feel like you live by 4 or 5 p.m. because you have a family to take care of when you have gotten your work done. Is that supposed to make you feel bad? Being a woman is not simple by being a professional woman, but also to be a mother, right? But that's something that we need to let women be complete. They don't have to choose between career and family life. They can do both. If men can, so women can do it as well. It takes about getting organized. It takes about discussing roles within your family, and maybe it's time for you, if you're a male, to help your wife in more aspects that you have done until now, to let her be able to spread their wings and go after those those dimensions in the career that they couldn't otherwise with your help, because she helps you every day as well with the children, right? You can take on more task to help facilitate the process for women, not because you want to give them an advantage, but just because you want to close the gap, they just have to work so much harder to get to the same place where men are just starting. There's another chapter in this book which it also talks about how difficult it is to change the status quo, because people tend to hire candidates similar to themselves. So again, in this Silicon Valley bro culture that is being analyzed in this book, we have an industry, like a tech industry, that's male dominated, that is a white male dominated. So how embracing is of diversity and inclusion and gender and race is this going to be if naturally people tend, without making a conscious effort, to hire people that are looking just like them, that are thinking just like them? But if you think from a business perspective, is that really the way you want your business to run, or do you want to keep looking for ways to innovate within your company? And in order to do that, you need people with different backgrounds, with different life experiences, people with different approaches to the same solution, and you need to be more inclusive. Okay, so the problem being said here is that whether it's something that is designed to be this way in companies, and whether it's that they're consciously doing this to work this way or not, it's just so hard to change because, or it's hard to change that status quo because people tend to hire candidates that are similar to them. Okay, and I'm pretty sure you're familiar with this. So if you are aware of opportunity gaps, educational gap, equality, disparities, and so forth, you are going to probably already know, as it's mentioned in this book as well, about the lack of opportunities for companies that are led by women, because they have less access to capital or to financing, because again the investors are looking for people looking like them, thinking like them, to invest their money. And yes, they're free to invest wherever they want, but how are we going to create a change if we don't give people the opportunity, and in this case if we don't give women the opportunity to run their own business? Now think about it, and this is a good reason which I found in this book as well, which I think it's important to mention, is that women also make about 70 to 80% of what the customers purchase. Okay, 70 to 80% are purchases made by women. So wouldn't it make sense for your business to have services that are targeted toward women? Wouldn't it make sense to have women that are also part of this decision-making process, not only to give feedback, but also to make decisions, to lead change, to lead big decisions and big companies, big directions? Well, they can probably relate better, maybe. Maybe they can also understand better what's problematic that women are trying to solve, on their households, on their professional lives, on their family and their relationships, whatever the case might be. There's also another study from the IMF, or International Monetary Fund, that look at 2 million European companies just to see how progressive Europe is. And those with women in 40 to 60% of the leadership roles had better financial results than men's. So that study suggested that diversity results in higher rates of creativity and better critical thinking due to the different approaches and the different perspectives that are brought to the table. So next time you think that your company is better by having men and that men should be leading the way, well, you maybe need to rethink that. Okay, you and I are part of a society that has a history which had played an influential role in shaping today's tech industry, and I would say in any industry how it is today, nowadays. It's a white male dominated world. Okay, and I don't have a problem with being white or not being white. The problem is intentionally closing the opportunity for everybody else that wants to come in. closing the opportunity for anybody else that wants to contribute with good ideas, with hard work. The problem is not being able to create opportunities for others to, propose different ideas and different solutions to the same problems that we're seeing nowadays on different areas in life, and missing out on all these great opportunities. And then we're wondering why other countries are taking advantage of those more diverse communities than we are. Okay, so we need to make a conscious effort about this. The goal for this book review, Brotopia, which I really enjoy and I recommend you to read it all. I'm not trying to replace any book, but I'm trying you to think about this, and if you think this is something that you want to know more and maybe have a better understanding of how this book is written, I recommend you to find it and buy it online or at your favorite bookstore. Okay, the goal here and the task is to improve women's inclusion, and that's not easy. Nobody's saying that it's easy, but there's definitely clear opportunities, and there is a clear path to create better opportunities for women, but that will also lead into more financial opportunities for companies who are choosing to diversify, who are choosing and betting on diversity, gender diversity, and just about any kind of gender. So I hope you enjoyed this book review, Brotopia from 2018 from Emily Chang. And I do really hope that it has inspired you to take action, that you can change every little bit that you can do at home with your children, with your friends, in your social circles, with your family, and also at your workspace, in your own business if you're an entrepreneur. There is an opportunity for positive discussion, and what better way to do it than talking about it and trying to be open and welcoming to everybody's ideas. So I want to leave you with this idea. I wish you a great week, and I will see you next time again in the next podcast episode. I promise it will be interesting as well. Take care. Have a week. Bye.